Well, maybe this is YouTube worthy for the other sawyers out there anyway. You're looking at the male all-thread piece of a tensioner assembly out of a Timberking 1220. Now this may look like, when you look at this saw and you see the whole assembly put together, it may look really challenging, but it's really just a threaded assembly that goes into a block, which here's your threaded block piece, and then it's got a great big spring in there and a couple of shims and bushings so that when you tighten the spring down, it lines up in the right spot with the indicator, which I'll show you when it's all put back together. But interestingly enough, today I was working on my sawmill and everything was going fine, taking blades on and off, no problem. I put a blade on and I made, I think, 2 cuts with it. And it was a reused blade, so I put it on just to see if there was any life left in it, and there wasn't. It made a terribly wavy cut, so I was like, oh man, I gotta get that off there. So I went to take it off, and my blade release here, my blade tension assembly was stuck. It was just ridiculously tight. I couldn't turn it loose or tight. And I couldn't understand that. You know, it just worked perfectly a second before. I hadn't hit it with a tractor. I hadn't done anything to it. It just was stuck. And so I finally managed to wrestle it apart, managed to back it all the way out, and I took it over here to my vise table now. I'm getting it cleaned up and looking, and I wanted to show you right there is a busted thread. You can see this other thread here that's kind of flattened off, but I don't think that was the issue. I don't think it doesn't normally set that deep. But right there is a broken thread where something happened. Now when I was trying to take this thing apart, I smacked the end here with a hammer to try to drive it in because I thought maybe the wheel slide was sticking, but it wasn't. But there's a busted thread there, and inside of here there's also a busted thread. You can see down inside there, the female part, there's a busted thread. So I don't know if that broke, you know, while the saw was in operation and that's what made it jam up, or if I broke it when I hammered on it and was trying to take it apart. It doesn't really matter. It is what it is. It's broke. But when I took all this apart, there was little metal fines all inside there. It was just super ridiculously tight to turn it, you know, and so it felt like it was cross-threading. And I don't know that it necessarily cross-thread, but it had some metal fines either from that broken thread or then from fighting with the threads. But it had some metal fines in there. So I've got it taken apart. I've run a wire brush through it. I've cleaned it up. Tried to get all the metal fines out of here, which is difficult because I don't have very small. I got this little small like toothbrush and I had to kind of jam it through there. But I've cleaned it out as best I can. I'm spraying it with electrical cleaner just because, you know, it's a quick blast and evaporates, so it's not leaving a sticky residue like a motor oil would. So hopefully it'll get all the fines out of there. I'm cleaning up the male threads here, and then I'm going to put this little block into my vise, and I'm going to see if I can work my handle back into it and get it to where it's working in and out easily like it's supposed to. And if so, then we'll take it back over, put it back on the sawmill, and hopefully be back in business. So if we can get the camera to focus, you see that? See all those little metal fines? And they're almost stuck to the screwdriver like it's magnetic. So those are all down here inside the valley of those threads. And I'm spraying it with the electrical cleaner, and even spraying it, like jetting it with that stuff, they're still wanting to stick in there. So I'm having to scrape them out with this little pick. You know, just scrape them and knock them loose. They're not really lodged in there, but they're not dislodging easily. So that's why I mentioned, you know, that I'm using the electrical cleaner because it's pressurized and evaporates. And then once I get it really, really clean with the pick and clean it like that, then I'm going to use the motor oil when I try to put it back together as a lubricant. So I'm going to keep working on cleaning it. I just wanted to show you what I'm getting out. All right, well, good news, I hope. I've got it all cleaned out, and you can see I've gone all the way through the female coupling now with the all thread. And I did this, I had to work it in there about 3 or 4 times. But you can see now, I'm turning it one-handed. I actually had it just spinning, just whirling just a second ago. That's why I figured I'd go ahead and make the video. I went ahead and cleaned it all out. Like I said, I had to kind of ream it in once or twice, and it would start getting real tight. And when it did, I would I'd back it back out and there was metal fines just stuck all over in the threads here again and on the tip. So each time I would do that, I would ream it in a little bit, take it back out. I'd clean it all off with the electrical cleaner, spray out all inside there with the electrical cleaner, and then ream it in again. And each time I'd get a little deeper, and finally I got to go all the way through. So look at that. Ooh, yeah. We'll see how it works in its application. But each time, like I said, I would go a little deeper, and then once I got it to go all the way through, before I backed it out, I sprayed off the tip down here because it had metal fines all over. So I sprayed it all off, backed it all the way back out, ran it back in dry, made sure that it went all the way through easy and didn't lock up at all, and then I put the oil on it. So it should be really nice and clean now. Like I said, I'm running it down by hand, just no problem, just spinning it one-handed, nice and easy. So that's that's very much an improvement over how it was, where I was literally all my weight and all my strength. I mean, I'm not a huge guy, but I guess I consider myself a strong buck. Anyway, I was really like, it was stuck so dang tight, I thought I was gonna have to, I started trying to look at how I could take it off there, you know, with a smoke wrench. I'm happy I didn't. I managed, like I said, I fought it apart and got it all cleaned out. So now we're gonna go put it back on the mill and see how it works. So I'll show y'all, here's all the components. And you know, when you take the things apart, take them apart in an order so you can put them back together. These are all the components that sit on the threads of this tensioner assembly. That's why I said it might look a little intimidating. But I'm going to show you here, if I can set the camera down somehow, just how they all slide right back on. Real nice and easy. Let's see if we can do this. Yeah, maybe that works. Okay, so when I took them off, I laid them out, you know, in reverse order of how they came off. So these are all, this whole stack of shims and washers, and there's even this little flat bearing, which I've never seen a thrust bearing like that that's that small. But all this stack all just goes right on here first. And one of those looks, it's some kind of washer, but it looks like it's pretty badly worn or broken. I don't know. Those goes on. This red plate, this is your tension indicator. So this is that red tab that lines up with the red tape on your slot. This is just a bushing, sits on, and your spring sits against it. That bushing sits inside your spring. Same bushing on the other side. And then your whole barrel assembly here goes over top of it. And as you put that on, of course, make sure your tab indicator goes inside there. So you can see, obviously, by hand I can't push any further than that because that's that spring hitting resistance. But now we're going to go thread this into the mill, and we'll tension down against that spring, and hopefully everything will work. So I don't know, maybe I can set this up where you guys can watch me put it on the mill. Hey, look here. Hey, look at that. So we're going to set her in here. I've got that block is still a little bit loose. I put the bolts in, but I left them, I didn't snug them down. I wanted to get this started in and make sure that it was going easy, which it is so far. I'm making sure that red tab stays lined up where it's supposed to be. Oh yeah, that's sweet. That's right, easy. Okay, so now I'm getting it to where it's starting to want to tense up a little bit. And so now I'm going to tighten these bolts back down that hold that plate in place. And we still don't, our threaded rod is still not sticking through that coupling piece. So we still haven't run it as deep as I did over there on the vise. And that was why I wanted to run it extra deep on the vise, to make sure that when I put it back on the mill, when it started to tension up, I wanted to make sure that that was actually the tension of the spring, and that it wasn't a false positive and that I was jamming up in the threads again. So now we don't have a blade on yet, but I'm going to go ahead and run this in. And I want to see, as I do, now this block here, this whole thing is getting pulled this direction by that assembly. So I'm running it in until my spring indicator says I'm at the mark. And there we go. You can see we've run in now where we're lined up. You can see how much of our threads are sticking out the backside. So everything looks like it's working now. I'm gonna loosen it back off, make sure it can slide back in easy enough. We'll put a blade on and see what happens. Well, okay. I think it's fixed, which is a huge relief. I had about, I don't know, an hour of downtime, but we've got it in there now. Everything's threaded down to the mark. Blade is on. Got our log clamped, so we'll, I guess, make a cut and see if anything flies apart.